You're listening to Systemic Error Podcast. The failure was designed.
The book that accidentally created monster Alex Jones. And the author's deep regret, based on an article by The Conversation. The secret realm is not a theory. Power was always visible. Jen Ronson's is being remembered as a book about weirdos and fringe prophets. But the deeper story is ugly that captured a political culture in which people were increasingly trained to look away from the institutions actually doing damage and toward imaginary puppet masters instead. The article's own evidence makes the point for us. The decisive actors were not mystical elites in hidden chambers. They were federal agents at Ruby Ridge, armed movements around Waco, political opportunists like Alex Jones, and real networks of wealth and secrecy such as Bilderberg, Bohemian Grove, and Epstein's circle of abuse. The problem was never that power was hidden in a cartoon sense. The problem was that power operated openly enough to wound people and obscure enough to avoid consequence. Ruby Ridge taught the wrong lesson. Ruby Ridge was not a fever dream. According to the source, U.S. Marshals shot the family dog, killed Sandy Weaver, then later killed Vicky Weaver while she held her infant daughter. That is not the record of the benign state suffering from misunderstanding. It is the record of lethal institutional force, followed by media culture that recast a human catastrophe as a psychodrama about extremism and mistrust. That framing mattered. It handed the far right a Mars story and gave the state cover. The result was predictable. Militia movements expanded. Waco followed, and then Oklahoma City. When government violence and elite impunity are treated as background noise, conspiracy becomes a recruitment tool. Paranoia became a business model. Alex Jones was not some accidental sideshow. The article makes clear that Ronson helped drag him into broader visibility, and Jones turned that visibility into a career built on inflaming paranoia, manufacturing certainty, and converting grievance into political identity. He was later sued, lost, and filed for bankruptcy over Sandy Hook lies, but the damage was already done. He helped normalize the idea that reality itself is negotiable. That is the actual mechanism. Conspiracy talk does not just spread misinformation. It builds a market for resentment. It gives people a script in which every institution is corrupt except the broadcaster selling them fear. That is not confusion. It is entrepreneurship. Real secrecy gives the lie its fuel. The article is right to note that some of the sayings conspiracy theorists fixate on are real. Bilderberg exists. Bohemian Grove exists. Epstein's network existed. The wealthy and connected do conceal things. That much is not fantasy. But the existence of elite secrecy does not validate the cartoon of omnipotent puppet masters. It exposes something more ordinary and more dangerous, a ruling class that hides its own misconduct, protects its own members, and lets the public choke on the smoke. When power actually behaves this way, it becomes easier for demagogues to launder grotesque mythology through half-truths. That is why conspiracy culture is so durable. It feeds on real concealment and then turns it into total explanation, which is exactly how actual accountability gets lost. The useful idiots of authoritarian politics. Ronson's point about fringe thinking crossing into the mainstream has aged badly because it is now the mainstream's infrastructure. Malcolm Roberts praising Jones as a beacon of hope is not an eccentric footnote. It is a sign that conspiracist rhetoric now travels comfortably inside elected politics. Trump's reported call to Jones after election night fits the same pattern. The paranoid entertainer is not outside the system. He is part of the system's emotional supply chain. This is where the article's framing is still too soft. Calling Jones irresponsible is accurate but insufficient. He is a propagandist who monetized social breakdown. The question is not whether he believed his own material. The question is why institutions let him become influential enough to matter. The pattern is institutional cowardice. The larger political pattern is simple. State power hurts people. Elite networks protect themselves. Media flatten the resulting rage into spectacle, and charlatans rush in to sell a fake explanation that feels more coherent than the truth. That is how democratic decay works, not only through overt authoritarianism, but through constant misdirection about where power actually sits. If the Democratic coalition wants to beat that, it cannot just debunk the latest hallucination. It has to confront the real machinery that makes hallucinations politically useful: secrecy, impunity, and institutions that keep asking the public to mistake damage for drama. You've been listening to Systemic Error, thanks to Alternet for today's article, with the automated voice of Norman. Thanks for listening.